Why justice feels different in Korea? Why is it? Why does it feel different in Korea? And it's just a cultural explanation, not a judgment. So when people from outside Korea look at certain legal cases, they often feel confused. I often feel confused. And we say things like, why does the punishment feel so light? Why does the system seem hesitant? And why does justice move so slowly? And these reactions are very understandable, but they often come from assuming that justice means the same thing everywhere. So today, I don't want to argue that Korea is better or worse. I just want to explain something quieter. Like, justice in Korea is shaped by a different sense of responsibility. And without understanding that difference, I think many outcomes are easy to misread. Like in many Western countries, justice is imaged as something the state owns. So when a serious crime occurs, the state steps in almost automatically. So the logic is very simple. A crime violates an individual, therefore the state must respond, regardless of how the victim feels afterward. Justice moves forward when the victim is exhausted or afraid. But in Korea, justice has different logic. Here's justice has been long understood not only as a resolving wrongdoing, but as preventing further rupture in the surrounding community. So the question often becomes, how do we respond without breaking everything around the incident? This differentiates the entire system. So in Korea, justice often advances through the victim. One of the least understood aspects of Korean justice is how much momentum depends on victims. Not because the system lacks seriousness, but because responsibility is distributed differently. So, in many cases, the victim must initiate the process, continue providing testimony, withstand repeated questioning, resist pressure to settle, and keep showing up over and over and over again. And then when a victim becomes overwhelmed, which is very human, down. From the outside, this can look like a leniency, but inside the structure, it is less about favoring the offender and more about how much endurance the process quietly requires. So, justice in this sense moves forward only as the victim can carry it. So, why does this structure exist? I think this didn't happen by accident. Like Korean society has been shaped by values that emphasize continually over confrontation, repair over rupture, coexistence over clear division. So, conflict has traditionally been seen not as a neutral tool for truth, but as something that risks destabilizing the whole group. So, legal action is often treated as a last resort rather than a first response. This is very different from Western legal culture, where conflict is often understood as clarifying responsibility, drawing boundaries, and restoring order through exposure. So neither approach is purely moral or immoral. They simply prioritize different risks. But I think when it delays, it becomes dangerous. The difficulty appears when a system designed to reduce disruption faces crimes that escalate over time. In some cases, like repeated stalking, and when it ends with murder, or prolonged abuse that becomes irreversible. The logic of waiting until things are undeniable can fail. So intervention arrives late not because danger was invisible, but because decisive action was considered too disruptive too early. From the outside, this looks like indifference. But from the inside, it reflects a hesitation rooted in responsibility toward the wider social fabric. But violence does not move at the speed of caution. And this is where the structure begins to show its limits. So, why this feels especially painful to observers? For international audiences, especially those familiar with Western systems, the frustration comes with the mismatch of expectations. They expect justice, I expect justice, we expect justice for function independently for human endurance. But in Korea, justice has often been shaped by how much pressure a person can bear without collapsing the surrounding order. And this doesn't mean victims are ignored, it means they are quietly asked to carry more and more and more. And when they cannot, justice appears to dissolve. And what looked like softness is often exhaustion. So I have a question for the future. This is not a call to abandon Korean values. I love Korean values. And it's not an argument for copying Western systems wholesale. So I think every legal culture reflects what a society fears most. So the question is whether a system built to protect harmony can also learn to protect individuals before harm becomes irreversible. Perhaps the future challenge is not choosing between cultures, but adjusting where responsibility rests. So the justice does not depend on how long a victim can endure, but on how firmly a system can stand. Don't you think so? So that justice does not depend on how long a victim can endure, but on how firmly a system can stand. Justice in Korea does not fail because people are indifferent, and does not feel different because the law is weak. I think it feels different because responsibility has carried in quite a heavier way, often those who are already hurt. So, understanding that difference does not excuse every outcome, but it allows us to read them with clarity rather than judgment.